rock crawling. I'd never been out of Gunnison, Colorado. I mean, it was pretty rare that, maybe I went west of Grand Junction. I don't know that I'd ever been east of Denver or Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
I've met more people in rock crawling than I've met in my life. And I haven't met a bad one yet. It's absolutely crazy. It's like my kind of people. I started creeping off of that thing, still thinking, hey, we got $10,000 on the line for this Texas Top Gun shootout. Looked at the bottom, it's like, man, that would be freaking stud line if a guy could just drive off of this and pull it off. Brain instantly went to play mode. I forgot all about being in a comp, and it's like, send it. So I just drove straight off of it. And I love We Rock too. I just hate cones. I love We Rock. And I love the mental aspect of it, but my head goes berserk every time I get in a car. It's like, hell with these damn cones. Let's find a bonus line and climb something cool, and and they're all cool. All the lines are cool. I lose my mind, and it's like, just run the damn thing over and we'll go climb something else.
Welcome to the Off-Road Campfire podcast, where stories are told and legends are made. Tonight, we have Kalif Redden, chassis fabricator, competitor in We Rock, X-Rock, Supercrawl, and Trailblazer and Trail Hero winner 2 times. Kalif, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Hope you are.
Awesome, man. It is absolutely a joy to have you. And I guess full disclaimer, we're all from the little same podunk town in Colorado.
Yes.
And I think Kalif is more the native than any one of us, Clinton. So
for sure. For sure.
You were born and never left, correct?
Wasn't quite born here, but got here as quick as I could, but a very young age, probably 2.
Okay. So as far as you know, that's it.
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I've been in Gunnison.
Gunnison is it. That's awesome. So we already lost you. Where'd you go? Did I see was it something I said?
I'm back now. I don't know what it did to me.
Hey, there you go.
You good?
Well, this is the joy about editing. You or not, just leave the whole dang thing in there because nobody really cares anyway. The 5 people that are actually going to watch this it's not that really big a deal. Well, man, I'm going to tell you what, I think my going to high school with you and everything else, I think, and moving away from Gunnison a while back, I didn't realize how big you'd gotten until I was watching, I guess, a bleeping Jeep video with my kids. And Cole on there said something about, Kalif Redden hit this trail. And I said, well, wait, there's not many Kalif Reddens in the world. You can't tell me it's the same dude. And lo and behold, this quick Google search, and I was like, well, I'll be damned. I never knew it. So, man, tell us a little bit about growing up in Gunnison and kind of what life was like in the early years for you. Was it what got you to off-road in the first place? Was your family into it? I mean, I know a little bit of the story, but for those that don't, was it your family that was into it? What'd your family do?
Well, my parents and whatnot, just, they're ranchers and, work cows and all that. And they had an aunt and an uncle who, when I was young, I was always on my BMX bikes. And that seems to be the start for everybody in the off-road era. And, that gravitated to my aunt and uncle got me my first motorcycle. And they were big into scouts.
Okay.
Good night. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago, they were running trails that, had just opened that we're still running today, building, bigger and badder scouts and all that. And, I progressed from, the motorcycles and started mud racing and whatnot, and dirt bikes and 4-wheelers and snowmobiles and just all the off-road stuff, building motors. But, eventually it gravitated, watching them built some just real cool cars and getting into buggies and stuff like that. I guess that was the main gravitation that, got me out of just the normal Jeeps, the half monster truck Chevrolets, mutant go beat stuff up in the hills, into more of getting out of the mud and everything and onto bigger axles, and eventually led into the rock crawling. And so then I bought a buggy and worked on it. It wasn't quite what I wanted, and it wasn't doing exactly what I wanted. I figured that out real quick. What rigs were doing what, trying to figure out what's making these things capable. Why does this car work better than this car, in more places? Weight, geometry, power, lack of power.
I mean, your chassis building mind had just like taken over and is obviously very knowledgeable. But before you go down that whole road, I want to know even more, go back to the start. Like because to get into chassis building, to get into this competitive spirit, you have to have drive and a passion. And I can only assume that comes from ranching as a young kid. What was life like I moved to Gunnison when I was in high school. What was life like as a younger kid ranching in Gunnison, Colorado?
I guess that played as much of a role as anything. There's a lot of drivers out there and, a select few builders, but it takes that guy with that mechanical mind. And, being on a ranch, if something broke down, we couldn't go to town to get it. We had to figure out a way to build it or fix it or repair it. And just on the repair aspect, learning to weld, learning how to wire stuff, learning how to, work on a carburetor, or, somebody's carburetor's not right. It's like, oh, just tap on that float bowl. It's that simple, something that's that simple, most people just don't get the grasp of. And, there's obviously it's a sport of gearheads and whatnot, but there's just some guys that are so smart at it. Jesse Haynes, especially. The guy's just so knowledgeable, one of my great rivals, great friends. But, somewhere, some of us had this weird, crazy mechanical background of we can build anything. And so, that's how it came to be with my first cars. It just wasn't what I wanted. And when I got it, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Started noticing flaws from all that ranch life and having to fix my own trucks and, do everything on your own. We just couldn't, we couldn't afford to, to go to town and buy it, but B, we could probably build it better anyhow. And so we started doing all that. And that's really what gravitated into, the knowledge of my own chassis and, figuring out the geometry, just always messing with everything, whether it was dirt bikes or snowmobiles. It's like, oh, this thing's not handling right. These taller skis, are making this thing act different, or we lowered this chassis and made it act different. I guess that's the biggest thing as far as now being a builder that, really got me ahead of the curve on that, where I could be successful in it.
So was it just a progression over time that you kind of were like, I could do this, I could make a living out of this? Or was it ever a moment where you're like, I'm a little bit better than most?
It was really, really fast for me. And I don't know why. I went wheeling with Jason Navidi. Obviously, he'd had some cool cars.
We don't talk about that guy on this show. We don't mention foolish names on this show. Yeah. So yeah, we don't talk about him, but go for it.
Yeah. So, he had some cool stuff right down to Walker Evans's old peanut buggy. And I never really saw it or, got to see him compete, but I took an old Comanche down to Moab one year, just I think it had a locker in the rear and 33-inch tires. And we went into Pritchett and everybody's like, get that old piece of crap truck off the trail. Things on leaf, on leaf springs or whatever it was on, and 33-inch tires and no lockers. It doesn't belong here. You're going to hold everybody up. And why they were all broke down at the bottom of Rocker Knocker, I just blazed right up through there, and it's about the last time they'd seen me. But, throughout the trail, they kept saying that. And Jason had helped me along and be like, just bring it up here, or go, give me some little tricks on where to go. I'd never been to Moab. And, so that escalated, and I built a YJ, and it was on leaf springs on 40s. And man, that thing could just climb anything. Just, between it being a fairly capable rig, even though it was on leaf springs, I was just happened to have the knack for it, just real capable driver. And, it was just running circles around some people and not as good as other people. So, gravitated into that kind of my first buggy that I bought. And, that's where I started learning how to do tube work through my aunt and uncle, right, Mark and Lena Drummond, and started working on it, trying to make it more what I wanted. And it was just a great car. When I got done with it, it was a good car before then, but, kind of my driving style and what I'd learned from my family on that, is I was always, right up at the front of the pack. Man, guys, I don't know what's going on here.
It's all good. It might just be buffering. It
comes right back. I just don't know why it's timing out.
Yeah, just maybe the connection. No worries. So I mean, I've got to ask before you get into the buggy stuff. I mean, heck, I always saw you drive a truck around for the most part growing up. But what was the vehicle you liked before all that you wish you had back before you got real serious?
I went through so many of them. I was so hard on stuff growing up, wrecking them, jumping them, bending the frames, blowing the motors. But always just an old Chevy of some sort. Whether, obviously all the old square bodies were kind of my thing. And then took, I believe it was a 91 step side, and just yanked everything out from under it. Put, a motor that I built in it. It ran good, 4-speed transmission, put a, Dana 60 in the front, leaf springs, just a real good all around, truck that I built. Yeah, it was on leaf springs, but it was amazing. We could jump it, mud race it, and then drive it home from the mud races. We'd go to the mud races, and have a real good shot on winning it. And then everybody else putting the race trucks on the trailer, we'd be driving it home. They're like, man, you drive that thing? Now drive it everywhere.
Yes. So I'm sure many people would say, well, how much mudding do you do in the desert of Colorado? So, I mean, there is some out there. You can get yourself in trouble pretty good. I didn't know you mud raced. How far have you traveled to do mud racing?
That was all pretty much local. La Vida, Ordway, stuff like that. That was pretty legitimate mud racing. And, then, just our backyard mud whomping in a cow pond. I mean, they could be 2 foot deep to 6 foot deep.
Right.
And be there trying to recover it all day long, or out at the lake and go get stuck in the beach.
Yes.
Yeah. I do remember one time going up to the pond up in Hartman's, and it was dry. And I learned very quick, it's never dry.
Yeah.
I took that little TJ I had and buried the living crap out of that thing. Yeah. So there's definitely mud out there. It can be found for sure.
How old were you when you started really like actual technical rock crawling? When did you start getting into that side of it?
Actual technical rock crawling, it's, I didn't think it was very long ago, because it really wasn't, but probably now, as far as, I did some rock crawling with Jason and whatnot in that old Comanche, and then I got that green buggy, and, I was tooling around with some friends figuring it out. But that was about 7 years ago when I rebuilt that car and took it to my first We Rock event.
And where'd you get that one from?
Somewhere out of like Louisiana, or somewhere where they don't have rock crawlers. I knew it's what I wanted.
It's probably why the chassis didn't work out real well.
Yeah, I knew it's what I wanted because it had, the axles I wanted in it. I knew I wanted a lightweight car. Everybody wasn't really chasing lightweight cars at that time, but it was really light. 4.3 V6, not a lot of power. I was really started out more as a real finesse type wheeler, which has really paid off for me probably more than anything, is, learning how to drive soft.
Yeah, watching your videos.
Obviously, 100% just stand on it, wild man. But, that background was instilled in me for the first 4 or 5 years, where I learned how to read lines and wheel soft. And that's something you have to have. You can't just horsepower stuff. The good guys, the guys that are winning aren't out there just, abusing a car. They just understand the car, how to find traction where nobody else can.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that in your videos. You're very, very technical, very finessed, and
Yeah, so I got that huge technical background, and all my competitors anymore would be like, "What? You're the wild man." But no, I've really got that technical background, but I'm also one of the guys that it's like, all right, it's time to stand on it. And I think that's where snowmobiling or dirt biking or whatever comes in. It's like, I got to get to here, somehow, I know where the line's at. It's got to be finessed, but, I got to just boot it here off the bottom, get there, and then go back to work. And so it's just, you got to be, very well rounded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, how much of your, snowmobiles, dirt bikes, ATVs, you name it, how much of that skill is transferred to your driving?
A lot of it, especially on the technical aspect. Almost all the best drivers I know, the more when I sit down and start talking to them, it's like we almost all were very heavy BMX, throwing body weight around, or, coming into a landing right. And same on a dirt bike, especially a dirt bike. I got to really go heavy on the throttle, slip the clutch, pull it back in, kill the power. Sounds like we're just revved to the moon, but we're using it for, a blip or a double blip or a splat or whatever that might be to get somewhere. And then we're killing power with a clutch or with a brake. And, we just got to go point A to point B, stop and be going the other direction. Same with the rock crawling world. It's probably not quite as wrung out, in the throttle like that, but we're still using a lot of it. And then, prepping the car to be going a different direction, or using brakes to lay down a car, or possibly stand a car up, or to maneuver it. Dirt bike, it's like, I got to get my back end over here before there's any traction. We're using that. Or, I got this little crack in here. You sit there and beat on a wall forever on a dirt bike. It's like, I just go find this little piece of traction that's just hidden right here. I'm going to use that, or this, figure out where that transition is that lines that bike up and makes it lay down. Like when you're climbing those walls in like a creek bed that look impossible, they're straight up and down, and you sit there and roll into it about 4 or 5 times and you find something that it likes. It's like, okay, that's where I'm going to launch.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I think, you've done it for much longer than I did, but yeah, four-wheeling now, it's definitely a lot more softer touch, knowing that you've ridden other things and you understand the dynamic of other motors and aspects and geometries of certain things. You're right, it's a lot softer of a touch. So
the guys that are fast, whether it's dirt bikes or snowmobiles or a trials bike, they just got that touch. And when it looks easy, it is easy, but they just come to that mindset or that skill level where they just make it look easy, and you're like, that's all I had to do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. The finesse of a soft bump over a just hammer it until you get to the top is I was watching other people four-wheel over the years. I've been dumbfounded that it's not just a common sense skill.
Yeah, the bump especially, they bump and hang into it too late, or don't start it 6 inches soon enough or anything. And it's like, they can make it look like it's absolutely impossible and beat on it for hours. And then, just say, put a different driver in the same rig and go up it, and it sounds softer, less power. They go right up it, doesn't spin a tire. It's amazing what those little touches can do.
Yeah. Coming out east, it was a big change of watching people wheeling, and it's almost like you go wheeling now out east, and it's the exact opposite. It's like people are literally just bouncing rev limiters to get up anything.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of that, and I thought that really came into play, and I really want to get down to one of the off-road parks during rock bouncing competition, and maybe enter in it and just throw a different style in it.
It
Obviously,
is
I
a
love
different style. Yeah.
throwing the horsepower down too, but I've been fortunate enough to go back east, and let's see, 4 times now, and
Cool.
compete in that slicker, wetter terrain,
Very
and
cool.
it still really kind of plays down to the same thing, the guy that finds traction and how he finds
Right.
it.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
1200 horsepower matted does some amazing things, but you can
it also
also
can.
have the guy come out with 200 horsepower and just stage things up right,
Right.
you know. And there, a lot of it's, especially rock bouncing. I could be wrong, but I think there's a lot of show in that.
Oh yeah.
Not
Oh, yeah.
incorrectly, but those crowds are out there wanting to see tires melted off. Sure, Tim Cameron's just beating on the throttle and he knows it's not going to go anywhere. Just standing on it, he's like, okay, now I'll roll it back a foot and just boot it up to the top. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what needed to be done there.
Yeah, it is definitely a little bit of a showmanship kind of how far and how high can we send this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I've
I'm
never seen.
saying that,
I've never seen.
a full-blown rock crawler would go down there and do some of their lines. I mean, some of that they're having to air, 16 feet up
Oh,
to
yeah.
get to the next ledge or
Yeah.
whatnot. I'd like to play around with it, because I see them, where we wheel, and they're like, oh, we'll just boot it up that great big ledge, and it just doesn't happen.
No.
Whether it's different terrain or cars or mindsets, I don't know, but I'd like to play in that world a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, come on down. We'll go with you.
Yes. Yes.
Come on.
Come on.
So did you purchase Jason's or Walker's rig from Jason at one point in time or
No, so that rig went to another one of my buddies, a guy named Steve,
Okay.
and then he parted it out just the chassis.
Okay.
And so I'd seen that rig, a little bit and knew what it was, and it was real skinny cone dodger and all that, and I wanted something different from it. But so that was my first. So that first event at We Rock, I was in Sportsman with that green car. And so I took the drivetrain out of it, put it in that other buggy because it was even lighter yet, and then put full width axles under it and redid the suspension to my likings. And that was my first Pro Mod car.
Okay.
So I competed one time in Pro Mod. So I competed one time Sportsman. I think I got third. We really realistically could have won it that day, but I got a little wild on one course. And then went to Pro Mod and competed one time, maybe 2 times. Yeah, I did 2 times in Pro Mod. I think I could have won one or done real good in one. I don't remember how I placed. And then at Nationals, I placed third. And after that, so after that Peanut car, Walker Evans's car, that's when I built my first chassis and used my design for the most part and talked to some other guys like Jeff Kleiben and some other people to talk geometry over, but I liked the way that car acted. So I built my first unlimited car, with help, from Jesse Haynes getting his portals and, some help from a lot of friends. And that's when I built my first portal car. And I want to say that was approximately 4 to 5 years ago. And so that's how quick the sport took off for me.
That's cool.
I built that first buggy up and, one event in Sportsman. Then the next year it was 2 in Pro Mod. And then after that, I, in an unlimited car and, doing pretty good the whole time. I think I got a 3rd or a 4th in my first super crawl. And then, started doing pretty good in the We Rock stuff. And then this big, huge Trailbreaker stuff come up. And that's kind of really blended everything that I've got going into one big ball. Is I like driving fast. I don't I have a line figured out. I look at it, especially when I'm sitting in the car. I know where I want to be. So I love bookieing through courses. That's when I feel comfortable, is when I'm hauling ass and not thinking about it. And so the aggressive driving and the, little bit of soft touch is what got me the, the big Trailbreaker championships.
Yeah.
And then, that folded into last year on those X-Rock championships.
Right. So when you had the green rig and you picked up that one out of Louisiana, you brought it back
somewhere. I
or
drove
wherever
Michigan or something to get it, but I think it was built in Louisiana. I don't remember
okay.
about
so,
it.
I mean, but you bring that home and you go, I don't like it. I'm going to just adjust it. I mean, I'm probably not going to do that. I don't have a tube bender. Obviously, you know how to weld. I mean, did you have all the tools that just said that made it easy, or was it a?
No, I was still, notching pipe with a grinder and cutting it to length and take
Holy
a
moly.
piece of pipe down to my uncle's place and use his tube bender, and I had Rockworks bend some stuff up on the front that I didn't like, and to make it stiffer up front and lower. And then, it's like, okay, why is this car doing this? It was a great car. The thing could go anywhere. And it's like, well, let's tighten up this separation in the rear. Oh, wow, I really like that. And then just go wheel the snot out of it. And then it's doing this now that it wasn't doing before, and got that grasp of, oh, I tightened up, this geometry, and, oh, let's just weld that tab back on and go back to there. Okay, it took out this aspect, but it isn't doing what I changed it, to want it to do. It's like, where can I blend this right? Or which one do I need more than the other? What's going to work more well-rounded for me? And what cons can I overcome with something else, or, learn to deal with, where these other deals, with a suck down winch or weight bias or just, torque roll in the chassis. It's like, which ones do I really need, to be able to make this car perform everywhere?
So when you're coming back and making those adjustments, is it data driven or is it just feel? Is it just like
I'm all feel? I don't run any data. I know, I ran my numbers on a link calculator. I don't even know how to work the damn thing, but I have people run them and they're like, oh, this is really good. We don't, like this or that. I just look at the numbers. I don't really care about them. I get back in the car, go wheel some more, and if it's doing something, it's like, well, this should take this out. So, I change that up. It's like, wow, all right, I really like that. And then get in another situation, it's like, okay, there's the problem with that. How far can I go before this problem affects me? And then as I got more experienced with it, it's like, okay, I can put this in a car and make it perform like this. But now I got this other tool at my disposal that I can take out the negative side effects. So, okay, I gained something and didn't lose something. Or, oh, I can do this and helps me here, but it hurts me a little bit here, but then it really helps me somewhere else. It's like, okay, I got two positives, and this other deal's kind of really, I can go to front dig and get the car back down, or that's where I, changing so much in the car. And if it didn't work, if it wasn't right, I'd go back home and go the other way with it. I'd put, 10 links on a car and keep cutting it off till I figured out what I wanted. I mean, you can't do that with a calculator. It can tell you what you got. It can tell you your numbers, and those numbers can be the same as the other guy that's winning or losing or whatever it is. But, you go home and drive that car all the time, and it's like, okay, this is what it's actually doing. This, and then I started figuring out, okay, we'll call them the numbers, even though it's by feel. Some of these work better in Colorado than they do for, say, down in Utah or back east. It's like, okay, let's blend this car, a little more heavy on the traction side, because generally I don't have all that much traction. And then when I do have traction, maybe the car wants to hop or something like that. I throw some more water in it, or drive it different. Or if I'm going to be predominantly there, I'll change the setup.
Yeah, and I guess I'm kind of curious where that came from, whether it was just a skill you developed, whether you're a savant that we, underestimated for a long time, or because I guess when you go out and you don't feel the car doing right, how do you know it's, if we extend the frame, 2 inches, if we lower the cab?
A lot of that, was reading which direction does what, why is it what it is, talking to people, whatnot. I mean, clear back to when I was 5, playing with Legos every day, going, why do these move the same way if the links are parallel? But if I drop it, in the nose, and now it's doing this, and this is pulling, if I take, and twist this axle, it's trying to pinch at something versus go the other way. But if I go somewhere else, it pushes different, obviously that skill set was in my mind from, a really young age. And then you read and learn and talk to people, and get that more, but it's the guy with that technical background from, just an ultra young age. It's just one of those things I grasp in my mind. Well, I can't remember somebody's birthday. I don't know. And why does geometry feel right to me in a car by the seat of my pants? It's just people are wired different.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you go to Trail Hero for the first time in 2000.
Yeah, I want to say, so the first time I went, I believe I was supposed to go prior in my Pro Mod car. I had to back out of that one for a funeral, and I really wish I would have done it because that's an invite only type deal. Well, in the beginning, now we've got a qualifier. It's the most prestigious event going. I mean, you got to be somebody to be able to get in it. And some people talked to the organizers, Rich Klein, and said, this guy, driving some pretty amazing stuff. He'd be good for it. Well, I was in that non-rear steer Pro Mod car, and I really wish I would have got in it then. And I probably wasn't good enough at that time to win it and didn't have the car for it. Maybe now if I went back and, things were different back then and jumped in that car, maybe I had a shot at winning it with a non-rear steer car. Would have been pretty cool, but I didn't get to go that year. And then the next year, I got like a 4th or 5th. I had a bad course. The car just wasn't quite set up right for it. It was a front engine car.
Well, I'd like you to know the myth out there is, as I've heard it, that you won the first time you went to Trail Hero.
So it was the second time.
Second. Oh, I'm so sorry. Second time.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, the first year, for some odd reason, nobody in the field with a front engine car got up one obstacle. So it was a rear engine showdown. And there was one time when I was in that obstacle, had I had more tools in the car or had I drove it slightly different, I'd have gotten over it. And, then going back and looking at the scores, it's like, man, I had a really good shot at being, right there in that very top bunch. I think I ended up 4th or 5th that first year because of that bad course. And I know I could have gotten the car over it, but it just didn't work out for me that day. And then I went the next 2 years in a row, I won it. And then last year, we kind of had some, just some, not technicalities on the rules. I mean, we have judges just like any sport. And, they called, there was some controversy on whether or not I ran the course legally. And I seen some videos where it looked like it was legal. And then I seen video that looked like it was blatant, then I'd hit a flag, and then I'd watch the other one. It's like, I think I got it clean. And so at the end of the day, they called me the winner on that one. And I went back and looked at some more film, and I just didn't feel real good about it. So I said, go ahead and take me out. So that was that was the third time I ran. Or
yeah, that's an interesting, I guess, what I didn't think about, but that's an interesting dynamic when it's such a small sport and everybody's, for the most part, good friends and each other. But then you have judges making calls that, maybe not agree with.
Like
or
all sports, so if it had been a We Rock event or something, if we know we did something wrong, it is a very tight-knit group of, good guys. And now yeah, judges are going to miss something. And, championships have been won or lost or, events. They do their best and you're going to have a good day. You're going to have a bad day. It's going to be good on calls. It's going to be bad on calls. For the most part, it's super fair.
Yeah.
And, the time that I, you know, told him I didn't want that third Trailbreaker win, I still rack my head on it. I see one video, it looks good, and the other one, it's like, man, I hit it clear as day. And then the other, I just couldn't live with it on that one. Say it had been a Wee Rock event, that's that's why you have judges there to judge that. And, you get bad calls in football games, but you got to dominate and win the game. Trailbreaker, for me, really is more about the honor of just being there. It's, yes, there's an LCQ anymore to get some new blood in there. In the beginning, it was invite only. And, those guys had to vouch for you or you had to get voted in. There's a lot of honor on that those guys thought that I should be there. And I'll never give that up, especially in that event. It's okay. I don't think it was right. So I gave it to the person that I think won. Yeah. I didn't give it to him. It ended up going to him.
Right.
But, I said, I didn't do this one right. I think I can see that. And normally I'd be like, well, let the judges sort it out. They let the judges sort it out in football. You don't go look at the replays afterwards. But that sport, especially when you wheel with those guys that, have helped you out so much and they're so good at wheeling and we're all friends. It's just that one's all about the pride.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no money. There's no sponsors in that. It's the biggest event around and don't make a cent off of it and just destroy cars doing it.
Yeah. Every year it grows exponentially. So and I guess it's coming up in 2 weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks.
Are you headed back out there?
Yep, I got to go do it again until I just finally cry uncle. The sport is progressing and getting so big and challenging and, Trailbreaker and X-Rock, dangerous, for the most. You got to weigh your consequences in your life and just know how long you want to take it. And I'm still game for it right now. I don't know how much longer, I can just go out there and hunt cars, especially on, the budgets that I have. I have to basically build all my own parts. For the most part, I get some help and I've got some great sponsors that help me out with stuff. But when I tear up, $6,000 worth of parts at a, event, I got to go home and fix it.
So what I'm curious, because I watch the competitions all the time and, I keep track of them, but what's the difference between the Wee Rock circuit, the X-Rock circuit?
The X-Rock circuit, I guess, well, we'll start with Wee Rock. I'd kind of put it as, the gold standard over the years. It's the one that's stood the test of time. Yeah. And, others have came and gone, and it's always been very competitive and had a good group, chasing it. So I would say that Wee Rock is more on the technical side. Technical strategy. You're playing a game in Wee Rock. The cones are narrower. You can use your spotter for a penalty, especially the cones being narrower. You're going to build your cars a little bit differently. That's actually why I don't gravitate to being, trying to take Wee Rock as serious as I would. The cones are narrower, so the cars are built differently, and I can't afford to build two cars. I want the ultimate trail car or the ultimate competition car I think I can build. And even though it's only a couple inches wider and a couple inches longer, it doesn't fit through the cones as well. And that's a big part of the game, running skinny cars with lots of cutting brakes, lots of other features, cutting brakes, selectable differentials, where you can go to 3-wheel drive, and lock the left front and really bring the car around, a lot more than just front dig, rear burn. And then, strategy on course flow. You got to go through gates in a certain order. Sometimes you can pull 2 tires through these cones over here if you're smart enough to think about it and not get progression and not hit a cone to get lined up for these others. But if you've already been through that gate and you break the plane, it's different. There's a lot more rules, a lot more strategy.
Yeah.
And then that kind of takes you into X-Rock. And X-Rock is very similar to Trailbreak. X-Rock is something that's been around for a while, I believe, but Hans has really blown that up in the last couple of years. He put $10,000 purse out there per event. And I went out there, going, okay, this is going to be cool. Well, Hans sets huge courses. The drops are bigger. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, We Rock, they have some monster stuff, and it can get just plumb dangerous. And they're really pushing on We Rock right now, but not quite where X Rock is pushing it. They're throwing enough money out there that they want to see guys that are willing to break a car. Whereas if you're chasing a We Rock series, you can't do that week in and week out and be fixing your car. Hey, competitors are just going to be like, this is too much for 5-6 events a year. The car is always broken. We want a sport, to keep people in it, for a long time. X-Rock, there's a limited number of events with a very big payout, and the obstacles are just crazy, crazy hard and big. It's like, okay. And the gates are way wider. He sets them where it's pretty hard to get into a gate, but obviously back east, they don't have the train that we do in the West.
Right.
Train, you argue traction. Traction's actually, that doesn't really matter in competition. Everybody's got the same advantage, and their traction's pretty good. We're still climbing some pretty impressive stuff and dropping off some really big stuff. And then you get into something like Trailbreaker where, the rocks are just insanely big. You can be, and the nature of the area, instead of dropping off, dropping off a 14-foot cliff is huge, especially when you got a 30 to 40 degree run out on the bottom, and that goes down 100 feet. And, when you hit the bottom after dropping 12, 14 feet, your third gear in the car matted. I mean, you might go down another 50 feet before you even land on your roof. In X-Rock, Sinking We Rock or Trailbreaker, they've got 25, 30-foot stuff you can drop off of. But you drive down it sometimes, or theoretically it's possible that you can get yourself lowered down 15, 20 feet before the car just goes nuts and then have to save it from there. But I guess that's probably why Rich in the beginning of time, or even to this day, he's looking for the caliber of drivers that are able to do this without giving the sport a black eye and ending up with somebody hurt.
Yeah.
Not everybody can get on something where the car can flip 30 feet in the air instantly and just go to the cage. He's getting the quality enough drivers that they're like, okay, we can get off this 15, 20 feet. Then we know what to do down there. And I mean, we roll cars every single day, but I guess Trailbreaker is kind of the nitro circus of the sport. You're not going to just bring in a bunch of motocross guys and say, hey, let's do a nitro circus course.
So what would be your, I mean, maybe Trail Hero is that, but what's your favorite place to compete? And then I'm going to ask what
place.
I was going to say, and then I'm going to ask what is the craziest place you've ever competed?
So place, I guess, kind of goes with each event or, each deal, whether it's Trailbreaker in St. George or X-Rock back east. I can't say I've had such a good time at both of them, meeting new people, wheeling new stuff. I can't hardly say which one that is. I do really good at Trailbreaker also, and I don't tell anyone that is my ground to do good in. It's great big slab Moab type rocks, and I'm more of a broken boulder type person. I'm a big broken boulder type person, and I don't get to compete in that very often. Although X-Rock is a lot more of that great big broken boulder, but I keep getting caught in the rain and I don't wheel back east all the time and my setup could be a little bit off. I'd love to be able to blame it on the rain, but a lot of it's on me. And I've done very good at it. I mean, I've won it twice, and this last time I was out there, I didn't do real good at it and had some weather issues on that too. But if it didn't have damn rain back east, I would almost say the X-Rock might be my favorite because it's really more my style of wheeling. Then you look at the Trailbreaker, courses, they're just awesome, push me way out of my comfort zone all the times. And then the rest of what Trailbreaker has going on, all the live shows, the razor racing, the sand drags, the trophy truck, the Ultra 4 cars racing, the Trailbreaker going on, the We Rock going on. And I love We Rock too. I just hate curves. I love We Rock. And I love the mental aspect of it, but my head goes berserk every time I get in a car. It's like, hell with these damn cones. Let's find a bonus line and climb something cool, and they're all cool. All the lines are cool. I lose my mind and it's like, just run the damn thing over and we'll go climb something else.
Yeah. So I think the craziest shot I think I saw of you was actually sent to me by my aunt who lives in Waco, Texas. And there was a magazine, I guess she gets from her hometown of Waco. And there you are in the centerfold talking about some rock crawling event they had down in Texas where you are straddling a crack that it looks like it's 50 feet in the air.
Yeah, so that was Texas Top Gun Shootout. I forgot to put that in that. Competed in that. They had this big crack, and I looked at it. It's like, oh, that's way easy. You drive up to the top. It's great, big, huge. It's going to screw your head in the dirt if you come off of it, but you just drop the left rear tire in the crack. That takes about 6 foot of elevation out of the car and levels it out a little bit. You get down in the bottom and, just turn the wheel to the left and drive out. And that crack kicked a bunch of people's butts just getting up to the top of it. And I got in there, the car went right up it. And, I took a little bit bigger bite than I was anticipating. And so everybody's getting up to the top and then setting it up to drop that left rear in there and bring some elevation out of the car and everything else. Well, I got up to the top and, the rear steer unlimited car, I can do anything I want. I could have just worked it over there, but, car was way up in the air. I started creeping off of that thing, still thinking, hey, we got $10,000 on the line for this Texas Top Gun Shootout. Win this damn thing and get some money. I started off that back side and never even brought that rear end over. I was getting ready to. I'm, in the car, it was so cool. It was such a rad feeling up there in the air looking off of it. I looked at the bottom. It's like, man, that would be freaking stud line if a guy could just drive off of this and pull it off. Just the hell with dropping the rear end off in there. Brain instantly went to play mode. I forgot all about being in a comp, and it's like, send it. So I just drove straight off of it, and I probably theoretically could have got the car settled back down because it was still upright. But all of a sudden, the motor's starting to knock because it's out of oil. The tranny's not wanting to shift right forward or reverse. All I had to do was put it in rear only and figure out which way to spin the tires and which way to turn the rear steer, which probably was driver rear, and thinking about it would have been in reverse and the car would have just laid down. Well, I tried a couple things just because all of a sudden lifters are chattering and the transmission's feeling funny. And it's like, okay, I got to think of something pretty quick. And everything I was doing was making the car feel worse. It's like, just put it in gear and stand on it. I ended up rolling the car and it took me out of the competition just because I was up there sitting with where the birds ought to be perched. And, I'd be like, this would be rad if I just drove straight off of it.
It was a classic shot. I mean, iconic for sure. It was impressive. So your chassis building, when did you get the idea, like, I could sell these things? I mean, it's one, building it for yourself and just figuring it out for your own self. What was the spark that said I could sell this to somebody else, or somebody else even wanted this?
The spark was, so, I'd already had that Walker buggy and that other car, and they both performed really well. And I knew I wanted to go to portals and all that. I built the car and changed a lot of aspects on it. I knew which cars were hanging up in the belly and why. I knew which cars were too tall somewhere where I could take more height out of the car. I always had low slung cars. Maybe they weren't that much lower in the belly, but the rest of the car was real low. And I never chased that old moon buggy deal around where they built such odd, unique looking cars, that just tube going everywhere. I wanted something that resembled something, or, something that looked good. So when I built my first car, I spent a lot of time of knowing that it had to aesthetically look good because I was so hard on fiberglass and plastic and paint. It's like, this car has to look good naked. And then we can put some other stuff on it. And, I trimmed the belly and got it where I didn't think anything could hang up, and got my wheelbase where I wanted it, got everything set up. Still didn't know how the car was going to perform, and the car performed very well. Jeff McKinley drove that car to a second place behind me on my second car that I built. And obviously he's a world-class driver. I mean, Jeff McKinley is one of the best drivers in the world out there. So people were seeing him drive that car, or me in that first car. The buzz started going around. Everybody liked the look of the car. The car looked good naked. It performed great. And what people liked about my car, probably as much as the aesthetics, is how simple they were. I haven't ever been able to have a car with, race pack and all the computer control systems on all that, because I need a car that breaks down. I can run into some half deserted town to an O'Reilly's or an AutoZone and fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have, a whole trailer load full of spare parts. To this day, I don't carry a spare axle shaft. I don't carry a spare fuel pump. I don't have any race pack I need to carry for a spare. I don't even carry a spare tire. Everywhere I go, I don't have a spare for anything in the car, and it's never left me stranded. So I had to really think on, when you build a car that simple, you don't have a whole lot that goes wrong with it that you can't fit.
Yeah.
And then the weight was lighter because I didn't have air lockers, and the weight of the actual air locker, the mechanical unit, I didn't have the weight of the pump. I don't even run cutting brakes. My car's so simple. People look in it, they're like, and you ain't even got gauges in the car. It's like, well, I got a water temperature gauge because I can't tell if the motor's getting hot, but I don't run an oil pressure gauge. I know if it's rattling, if it's out of oil.
Yeah, right.
Usually I'm 15 foot off the ground, hanging on for dear life. I can't shut the damn thing off. Let it rattle and keep driving. So, but the simplistic aspect of the cars, people have just really fallen in love with. They're like, hey, you got some seat belts. I spent a lot of time making the cars very comfortable to sit in, even though they're so small. They're roomy, and most cars you sit sideways in, which kills my knees. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I got to shove these motors and transmissions around and forward and everything else to where I can sit straight in it. So I can be sitting in the car 6-7 hours and be comfortable.
Right. So when you started that first build, was it napkin drawing? Was it actual?
Yeah, pretty much napkin drawing.
It's just eyesight. Go out there. That fits. It doesn't fit.
Yeah, getting you back. That should get us.
There you go. Well, yeah. Was it just putting a piece of bar in and going, nope, I don't like that. Pulling it off, recutting one.
So I'm pretty good with math and all that. So it started out with graph paper. And each block was 6 inches, each block was 3 inches. That way I could get everything down into 3 inches, and I could get the aesthetics I wanted. And then off the graph paper, it's like, okay, here's my chassis at 10 foot long, because I'm running about a 108-inch wheelbase, but the rams stick out a little bit on each end. It's like, okay, so this is the length where I've got way over 100 degrees of departure and exit angle. My chassis basically ends on top of my steering rams. I knew I wanted that. So then I could sketch in a roof line and be like, well, that looks like that roof line's too far back. Let's just go ahead and slide this forward 3-4 inches. And, and then it's like, okay, I like the aesthetics of that. And obviously I had these other chassis that I knew how much room it took me to fit in, or how big a window had to be. And it's like, well, I could take 3 inches out of that. I'd still have room. Yeah. And the first chassis I built up, I went and started putting it together, and I have just a very raw shell. You put seats in it, it's like, shoot, I could drop another 4 inches out of this thing. And dropped another 4 inches out of it. So I gave that chassis away and built an even smaller chassis, because I knew I was after something that was way different than what was out there for a 2-seat car. Most two-seat cars, if you're 6'2", they're probably up over your head pretty easily. Yeah. And my cars, I'm 5'10", and I rest my chin.
Yeah. Well, I did read an article where you had to revise the chassis and build an XL model for a guy that was.
Well, no, and so kind of called that XL in the beginning, and then I realized how big of a person I could fit in my actual personal cars, even though they're so small it's not even funny. If I build the car personally, I usually use these smaller chassis, and because they're my personal cars, and then I sell them. If the chassis goes somewhere else, I build them ever so slightly bigger. Basically, they're about 3 or 4 inches tall, and that is so that somebody doesn't. Because on my personal cars, there's probably an extra 200 hours trying to get stuff to fit in that 4 inches of only height. Right. Because you can't get an exhaust under the seat. My seat actually gets cut into the framework. So the bottom of the car, I'm getting you back. So the bottom of the car, the belly of the car, the tube work actually goes through the seat, but it goes through the corner of the seat where you're narrow in your butt cheeks instead of in the hips, so you don't even know it goes through there. But it was able to bring the seats down another 2 inches in there.
Wow.
And all my other seats sit on that tube work or lower, or on that tube work, and they'll be have a little bit more padding in them. My seats, I got almost all the padding out, and then I could knock them down another 2 inches, and then you can't even get exhaust through the car. But it's those little attentions to detail of why I can build a car so small with, and it's a headache. I'm not certain that the bigger cars don't look better. They perform the same. It's the same car, but, people like walking up to the car and seeing how small it is. And some rare niche circumstance, it's gotten me under an overhang or under a nub of a rock, or the car's different. It gives you that. I mean, it's so rare, competition helps, but, one time's all you need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then the bigger cars, that just opens it up and so even the seat in my personal cars my passenger seat is cut where the transfer case goes through the seat also. And so in the front of these seats, they have about 2.5 inches of padding. And that transfer case is right under your thigh. You don't need padding under your thigh. You just need it under your butt. So I Frenched that 2.5, 3 inches into the seat and removed that padding, so your thigh just sits on the transfer case, even though it's still got a cover over it and you can't tell them.
Yeah.
But, that's how I got another 3 inches lower on the car. So I build the other cars about 4 inches bigger, just so people can actually get the dang thing built.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Because people aren't wanting to take, $700 worth of brand new seats and just start carving them up and cut all the foam out and be like, well, I can only mount it in 3 spots now. They don't want to do that when they're building a new car. It's like, well, if you want this car, that's what you got to do. Well, no, just build me that car, but don't do all that. It's like, well, it don't work that way. You ain't gonna fit. Yeah. There's no room in this car. You got to build it with a feeler gauge. Everything rubs, everything touches.
So I would ask, do you have people come to you and saying, hey, I want you to build me a chassis, but I want you to build it my way? Or is it
No, my chassis are they're very unique from other cars in the aspect that the skid plate, most of the time, the belly of a car, your whole transmission and transfer case fits in, and then you build a small skid plate under the motor. I run really small bellies that only houses the transfer case, and I run a really long link, and then I have to build a great big skid plate underneath the motor and transmission. And for the strength of the car, that all has to get welded in because that's now structure, because I build my cars real light, but I need them to be, be able to drop off a 20-foot cliff and live. And they're like, no, I want a removable skid plate and I'm just going to bolt it on. It's like, nope, my cars, they get welded up solid. You're going to have to pull everything out the top of the car. And that's the way it is. Oh, would you build one a little bit different where I didn't have to do that long skid plate up front and change these links? It's like I build one car, and that's the one that I drive. And obviously what I call the XL model, it's like, guys, it's the same car. It's the same geometry. It's the same everything. It's going to appear to sit 4 inches higher than my car, but the belly's the same height. The transfer case is the same height. The motor's going to go in at the same height. Even though I cut my oil pans down where I can drop them down another 3 inches, that's something they can do too. I cut everything up to get them lower in a car. And they're like, well, I don't want to cut the oil pan and, basically have the crankshaft wanting to rub on the oil pan. It's like, well, my personal cars are like that. That's why I gave you this extra room. It's the same car. Basically, the upper hoop, is going to be about 4 inches taller. It's really more of an aesthetic thing.
Okay.
And their seats might be 2 inches higher. They can cut that down in there lower if they want, or if they're a real tall guy, I tell them this is what you're going to have to do to get in the car, because it's still a very small car. But no, I build one car on what I compete in, even though there is kind of quote unquote an XL model. That's basically every chassis that everybody gets is the XL model. It's just my personal cars. If there's half an inch, I start cutting more tubules out.
Well, I was going to say there was a shot in the comments about your height from a buddy of yours. I mean, you can go look for it and I'll send it to you so you can give him hell. But yeah, I mean, you definitely are like we have 6.5 foot tall guys wheeling that need that extra 4 inches.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, no, I'd get that. Yeah. And I guess my thought is, if you know what works, why start building something else and then because that just starts causing problems.
Yeah, I don't want to build something that, people, when they're buying one of my chassis, they want my car. They want it to perform like my car. And I tell them, okay, this 4 inches of roof height isn't going to change anything.
No.
That's just a little bit of headroom for you. It doesn't change center of gravity on the car.
But you start asking about everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the aesthetics might actually look better on the full-size car, but, people like my little lowrider-looking cars. But, when they buy a car from me, I give them, I tell them, I'll tell you what brackets I'm running. I'll tell you where to mount this stuff on the axles. I'll give you my shock tube. I'll tell you, if I'm running water or where I'm running water or how much water I'm running. I'm going to give you every trick in the book. In the beginning of time, a lot of people didn't know that I was running really heavy overdriving cars. And I was only telling the people that were buying cars from me what I was doing overdrive wise. You go back, yes, they've overdriven cars here and there for years, but I don't think quite as much as I was. And everybody wasn't overdriving cars. Now, you don't see a cop car that's not overdriven. 5 years ago, everybody's running 529, and portals. Well, now everybody's overdriving these cars. And a big part of seeing what was happening and how it changed the characteristics of a car. And then I actually changed my geometry up for overdriven cars, because now that front end's pulling harder and the geometry worked flawless. Right. But one of the problems that I was having with a car, one of the things I wanted to do to a car to get more traction in one scenario, the overdrive neutralized the bad characteristic of it. So I got both of the compliments from it. I was able to change my link geometry to do something truly amazing that I really love doing. But in the other areas, the overdrive took care of the flaw of that. And also, if you overdrive a car and your geometry's funny, not funny, but say you got one certain geometry, thing might climb like an ape, but when you go to back off of something, it does really bad things to a car.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you feel like you want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And the car's just always going to roll over. And so I started doing a lot of geometry for the overdriven front end.
Yeah, makes sense.
So just little things like that, always changing. As soon as I started really heavily overdriving a car, I felt the side, because I used to overdrive a car pretty heavy, about where everybody's running now. But then I was overdriving almost 25%.
Right.
Which you watch a car and the front tires are moving 25% faster. They're just going, around, and it's just scooting the back end. It showed me very drastically what side effects that was doing on a car and where. And I thought about it forever. It's like, well, I could change this. And this is where I was wanting to go with this geometry anyhow, but it wasn't working the other way. It really going to that really heavy overdrive and being able to see the failures in a car. Like when I put it in reverse, I was able to solve that reverse issue problem. But when I did that, it made very dramatic changes in some other areas. I was really fighting cars.
I mean, just listening to you shows the difference between just an everyday or a weekend warrior wheeling, even with a sick rig, and those guys that compete. I mean, it's like, these are things I'm no huge weekend warrior, but these are things I would never have thought about. I mean,
right.
Yeah, overdriving a car is absolutely crazy in big crazy stuff. It does things to a car that most of the people with an overdriven car right now haven't even figured out. It is cool, but it goes back to that same deal on why, people ask me numbers on my suspension all the time. It's like, well, I could show you a graph on an overdriven car on what it's going to do to a car. It's going to scoot the back end. I could show you on a graph how your links are going to cycle and all that. But until your butt's in the seat and you can feel the major differences it does, it's just a number. I mean, and that number don't mean nothing. The only thing that matters is what works. And that's the guy going back home. And yes, you use your numbers to duplicate some stuff or have a reference or try and figure more stuff out. But I go home and I start cutting links off the car and I change it. And it's like, okay, let's see how this works.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
What I saw a picture of, I believe you had and you may have had several. Forgive me if it's an ignorant statement, but you had a chassis run Ultra 4 KOH as an Ultra 4. Or was that the Everyman?
No, I don't.
I saw a picture that you had on something, but
if it was a California event, okay, so that wouldn't have been in the race scene. That probably was in the Holly EFI shootout.
Okay,
which I'm so bummed they don't have anymore.
Which is, remember the backdoor challenge?
Yeah.
When everybody's trying to bounce up through there, and they were trying to see if the rock buggies were better than the rock bouncers and all that.
Yeah.
So the Holly EFI shootout is now basically the old backdoor challenge.
Okay.
In a different section of rock. But I think that's kind of what that is hinging on, is who's the baddest of the bad. Is it the rock bouncers or is it the rock buggies?
Okay.
But I think, you're never going to get that resolved. You could set up two different courses and, the bouncers ain't going to go up one and the rock crawlers ain't going up the other.
True. Mm-hmm. So for you, when was the time that you sat back and went, damn it, I built that. That's my chassis. And you had that moment of pride in not just building it for yourself, but building it for somebody else and watching them.
I had pride in like, I mean, everything back to my square bodies and my chassis and all that. You know, you always have pride like it's your kid. But when Jeff McKinley got in one of my cars and said, damn, Caleb, this is a sure enough wheeling son of a gun. I mean, it was my first car. It was simple. Everything was hand cut with a Torx and then smoothed with a grinder and drilling holes with drill bits. And, you know,
That's amazing.
everything. If it was metal on that car, it was built by hand and no plasma table, no nothing. You know, just, and I'm still very close to that right now. I have a welder in my shop and now I have a handheld plasma. I don't have a table. And now I got a TIG welder and some other stuff, but you know, I did good in the car and, you know, I was hungry and wanting to drive, but when you got a guy that has won that many championships and that many races and events going, Caleb, I want to buy, when he called me and told me he wanted that car, I about fell out of my chair. You know, it's like, you want my car, Jeff? You know, because
Wow.
I've only known him for maybe a year or two, and he's one of the big dogs that kind of took me under his wing. He was nice to me and treated me good. The guy that I palled around with fairly early, you know, I can't say that we were great friends then. He knew who I was, but you know, when he bought that car, he's like, and then he started driving it. He's like, Caleb, this is a really good car. You know, that one really blew my mind. And when he started driving that car, I think that's where a lot of people were like, okay, this is for real. If Jeff likes it, it's got to be a good car because, you know, Jeff runs good cars. I mean, he does, you know, something that doesn't perform around.
Yeah, it's your trophy without a trophy. I mean, that's.
Yeah, you know, I talked to him and, you know, at the time, but, you know, he didn't buy it from me because we're just buddy or anything. You know, he was needing a car and, you know, he liked what he saw in it. He had no clue if it was going to work, but he's like, you know, he knew, okay, this is a simple, lightweight car and this is what I'm wanting. And it was a 2-seater. That's the big, I'm the only 2-seater for the most part in unlimited class.
Oh, wow.
You know, those are all reserved for rear engine moon buggies for the most part. And, you know, you see Jesse Haynes moon buggies and then, you know, every now and then you see me and my silly car. And that's what I built the car from the beginning of time thinking, you know, I think I can build a 2-seat car and do this where, you know, I would love to have a single seat car, but I can't afford 2 of them. And I want to take my buddies out on the trail and have a car that I think is, you know, as dominant as any car in the world, but I'm the guy that's got 2 seats.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you where you are now. Is it really just you? Do you have help?
No, it's just me still. I mean, if somebody gets one of my cars, you know, it's still, you know, it's still built one at a time by me.
That's cool.
Everybody's like, you know, send all your tube work off and have somebody laser it and jig it and TIG it and this and that. It's like, no, if somebody buys a car, you know, they're getting it from me still.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that kind of your full-time gig? I know you're still ranching.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much my full-time gig anymore. Between trying to do a car a year and some chassis, even though this last 2 years has just taken a toll on me. You know, I blew up my Achilles and crushed an ankle. And so I was down for a year on that. And when you're not competing, people ain't calling wanting to buy cars.
No.
And so then I got back together and competed for a year and started getting, you know, all that stuff back where people wanted it again. And then life threw another curveball at me and trying to get rebounded from that one. So the last 3 years has just been a wild roller coaster ride.
So what are you telling yourself in these moments where you're right? If you're not, it's like any sport. If you're not on the field playing, nobody knows your number, your jersey name, nothing.
That's pretty much the only reason I went to the few select competitions I did this year is I didn't want everybody just be like, you know, where is he? Who is he? You know, where did he go? It's like I didn't have the time and the drive for it. And I think it's kind of shown, you know, I haven't just been, you know, perfect in the mental aspect of it, and everything else, just there's so much going on. But it's like, no, I got to get out there, and keep driving hard and, doing stuff. I haven't been on the media near as much, and posting videos just because I haven't been out. But, you know, but we got some good stuff in this year. Had some big drops that were fun, and the X Rock was good, and got back into We Rock, for that event at Nationals. Second day we posted second highest score. First day we had a terrible run, so if I could have drove like the second day, I had a pretty good shot at winning it. But you got to put 2 days together in We Rock.
If I would have caught you about 3 days earlier when you were coming out to Pennsylvania,
yeah,
I would have made the trek.
Nice.
Yeah, that would have been not a horrible trek. That would have been an easy one.
Yeah.
A lot shorter than what you drove it out there.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, PA didn't go very good for me at all. And, we won the qualifying. I felt real good. Car was just working flawless. It's like, oh yeah, I'm on my A game.
Right.
And we, went into qualifying, and it's like, just went out there and stood on the throttle, drove hard and fast like I like to, caught all the lines right. It's like, okay, we're here for real. We're a top contender. And then, I changed my strategy on running order and got caught in a rainstorm and everything else. And I was a little off my game, maybe. I don't know what all it was, but ended up having about the worst run of my life. It was just heartbreaking to do that poorly, but I'm got to see some good friends from back east. That's the coolest thing about this sport is, I guess prior to all this rock crawling, I'd never been out of Gunnison, Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty rare that, maybe I went west of Grand Junction.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd ever been east of Denver or Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And started chase, the first time I went anywhere was Nationals, which was in Farmington. It's like, oh man, I'm in another land. I drove a long ways.
Yeah.
Then it's 5 hours away.
Yeah.
I really thought I was doing something, and now I'm driving to New Hampshire and Pennsylvania and Tennessee and, St. George. I'm all over the place and met so many, good people. I guess I've met more people in rock crawling than I've met in my life. And I haven't met a bad one yet. It's absolutely crazy. It's like my kind of people. And they're just, for some reason, it's all the good people.
Yeah, very cool.
The off-road community is insane.
Well, next time you're in Tennessee, for sure, holler.
Yes.
That's an easy drive.
Yeah.
So standard question time, a little bit of standard questions. What is the best advice you've been given or you give other drivers?
Oh, never thought about that one. I guess if I was going to go talk to one of the dominant guys, whether it's in your class or another deal. Those guys are all, I mean, I've never seen anybody not willing to hand out information. Yeah. Maybe the pro guy or the dominant pro guy in your class. So after you've been there 3 or 4 years and you're starting to progress to his level, he's going to quit handing you information. But, when you're is in the beginning or you're talking to people, go get the questions and the answers figured out, and for the strategy, because it doesn't matter if it's mud racing where you think you're just standing on the throttle. There's always some tricks, rock crawling especially. Go talk to those guys that are, up at the top and winning it just for rules or strategy. Those guys are going to give you, those guys are willing to walk courses. Nobody's ever came up to me and said, hey, would you help me out with this line, where I wasn't like, I get pretty excited about it. It's like, oh yeah, let's go look over here. I want to help you out because, I want to see if my little trick paid off. I want to see this car do something that nobody else did or nobody else thought of.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's no different than any other sport where the people that don't make it are the ones that aren't willing to learn. I'm sure
you got to learn the strategy for everything's a game. You got to learn how to play the game.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen people come and go. Primarily, it's probably because they didn't evolve and didn't grow, and just didn't learn from the folks that have come before them. So
yeah, and then I guess the other big thing that especially rock crawling, I know because. And I still get the butterflies every now and then. It's changed a lot for me over the years, but I remember being so scared on an obstacle or saying, no, I can't do this, or it's too scary, and you always want to look at something and be like, I'm not going to try that. I can't do it. I'm going to wreck the car, something. No, go. That's the attitude you can't have. Go put the front tires on it and start taking baby steps. Be like, I still got it. I can still save it. Take one more little step, one more, just push it a little further, a little further. I'm not saying just go up there and run some crazy line. Just work it out one step at a time. And it's like, okay, I'm up here where I thought everything was going to be bad. Car still feels good. Go another inch. Just try it. Don't just sit at the bottom and say you can't do it. I wanted to do that so many times, and my damn ego and pride freaking gets me every time. But I see a lot of people don't try something. They're like, oh, I can't, like getting my daughter crazy spots on her dirt bike. She's like, I can't do that. I saw you go through there, Dad. I can't. It's like, well, just come up here a little ways. Just roll up here as far as it feels good and then stop. And it's like, okay, you went to there. Let's get you back off. Let's do it again. Let's do it. Let's go further every single time until you just say no. And next thing you know, or, in my rock crawler, throw my children in it and they take it a little further, a little further, a little further. Pretty soon they're through it. It's like, how was it? They're like, oh, that wasn't bad at all. It's like, there you go. At least you tried.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
Very cool. Next question. I guess because you have probably the ultimate rock crawling build, I'm not going to ask you that question. I'm going to ask you, if you had an ultimate leisure build, just for an everyday four-wheeler, as fun, what would you build? What would you start out with?
Trophy truck.
It's that go fast moment.
Trophy truck. I mean, that's whole life I wanted to race one of those dumb things. I know I'd have done good at it, but no, I didn't have money for a trophy truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody that knows somebody.
That's my leisure car.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you ever get Lauren Healy on there, be like, Kalif wants to drive a trophy
Yeah, by the way, there's this guy I know.
Yeah.
That would be, last episode we had a guy that's...
his was still an Ultra 4. I don't know if he's got... I don't know what he's got, but it's close enough to a trophy truck.
Oh, yeah, that Bronco, that thing's nuts. Yeah. That thing's just stupid. As much as I want to rail on Broncos, you can't rail on that one.
Yeah, that or maybe a drift car. I spent so much time racing four-wheelers and like hill climbs and all that. It's like drifting is so second nature to me. I'd love jumping in a drift car someday. Because my whole life was drifting everything before anybody even thought of a drift car. So
yeah.
But no, I think trophy truck would be it.
So I guess you open the door to this question then, because it kind of feeds into how much trouble you got into as a kid. What's your best policeman story? Without naming any names.
Some of it I don't get in trouble for, but I
was going to say Barnes isn't still around, is he?
Was good, but getting pulled over one year and getting I think I got like a 20-point violation ticket one time.
Holy moly.
Was that sheriff state?
It might have been 12 involved with that other one, but I think I had 24 points taken off my license in a month.
Was it in Gunny?
Yeah.
So was it the state trooper, the sheriff, city?
And that was between the town cop and the sheriff.
Oh boy.
Well, there's also some high. There was you remember there was races and burnouts and
yeah.
I did a burnout next to a cop one year because I thought because in my Challenger You remember it? Well,
Yeah.
70. We looked left at the stoplight. There was nobody. We looked right at the stoplight. There was nobody. Had the guy in the back seat look behind us. There was nobody. There was nobody in front of us. I started doing a burnout. Light was still red. We're sitting there doing a big burnout. But pretty soon it got so smoky we couldn't see. We just kept spinning the tires and we finally stopped. We couldn't tell if light was red or green or where to go or anything else. We must sit there, pretty good while and waited for the smoke to clear. There a ding cop parked next to us on the right rear quarter panel, just back far enough we could see him when we looked right.
Man, that's funny.
That's epic.
Yeah, he was there the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Between the sheriffs, I won't name drop them all, but yeah, I think they decided to just be friends with us so they can keep an eye on us.
A lot of good times. There's a lot of trouble, and a lot of times we should have gotten in trouble, but we had pretty good guys for the most part. And
so, well, man, I can't tell you what an absolute pleasure it's been to just catch up with you for one, but then pick your brain on this stuff. I mean, this is stuff I don't think about because I'm not in the chassis building world, but I mean, it is absolutely epic and sweet.
It's awesome.
It's incredible to listen to you talk about how you design things and the strategy at which every decision you make in a car it's not just at a whim, it's for a purpose. And that's incredible, man. So
yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure. Learned so much over the years, and our cars are evolving as fast as this sport. It's a really, really, really good time to, be in a rock crawler. I mean, we got 400 horsepower, 4 cylinders, and, cars, I think my car's about 2,800 pounds, 400 horsepower, and 1,600 pounds of its tires and wheels. So,
yes. So what's next for you, I guess?
Well, tires, wheels, and axles, but
yeah.
The rock crawling's treated me good. I think I would like to stay in it if I can. It's hard, it's expensive.
Yes,
but
is.
It's the way of life that I was looking for versus all other forms of racing. Mud racing, dirt bikes, snowmobiles are always leaving town for, 15 seconds of standing on the throttle or something. And, the kids are sitting in the pits and then you're back to a hotel or all the way back home. Rock crawling, everyone. It seems like even if we just go for a day trip, everyone is pulling a camper in case they spend the night, or it is a camping sport more than anything. Everyone else is like when you're sitting around all day long to do something, you do it for 30 seconds and they all go straight home. And rock crawling is all day messing around, come back to camp. It's steaks and burgers and BS and lies. And it was the sport that I was looking for, for all the other things that was involved with it. The camping's better than the wheel.
Very cool. So is it fair to say that we're probably not going to see an electric rock crawler out of Kalif Redden anytime soon?
I've actually had 2 chassis that were going to people to possibly be electric.
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to go electric. We probably build a better car electric. There's no denying that. I mean, with what we're doing with RC cars and MOA cars and all that. But
I mean, you're not running them far. I mean, they're not going.
No, and the power and the weight and where we could set weight and everything else. But why even throw a driver back in it? Why not just throw a gyro to the steering wheel and turn it into a full-size RC car? I'm still a gearhead. I want to hear the noise and the pipe and smell the oil. And when it's upside down, lighting on fire and smoking, that's the excitement to me. I don't want something silent just doing insane things because there's no driver in it. Yeah, you put a driver in it and be like, okay, we still got a driver, but no, I want the smoke and the oil and, the noise.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I know we could keep going for hours for sure, but I think it is definitely time to put the campfire out. Kalif, it has been an incredible conversation. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight and learning from you. If somebody wanted to order a chassis from you, man, how would they get a hold of you?
best way to talk to me and, even discuss one if it's right for them. Kalif Redden on Facebook, Messenger, stuff like that. My Instagram. Other than that, you're going to probably have to tie a bone to a string and swing it over your head.
Or just reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with it.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, hey, Caleb, thank you again very much. My name's Ryan Taylor.
I'm Clinton Catrona.
And this is the Off-Road Campfire Podcast. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Later, guys.
Later, dude.